Welcome to webinar session 5. Today we are going to discuss about the Michaelis and Menten theory. In our previous class, we discussed about two theories, two mechanisms. One is lock and key theory, and the other second one is induced fit theory. Besides that, there is one more mechanism, that is Michaelis-Menten theory. And a basic theory of an enzyme action was proposed by these two scientists, Michaelis and Menten. And mathematical expression and equation of Michaelis and Menten wants to describe the interrelationship between the parameters of an enzyme reaction. Here, they gave one mathematical equation, that is V0 is equal to Vs by Km plus S. And this derivation was proposed by scientists Michaelis and Menten. So they gave a mathematical expression and equation. So according to that, Michaelis and Menten, as per their equation, mathematical equation, here V0, it indicates a velocity at the starting stage or starting of the reaction. So at the starting of the reaction, velocity is 0. That is V0. And this equation relates the components of an enzymic reaction and the velocity, initial and maximum through a rate constant called Km. What is Km? It is a maximum reaction, enzymic reaction constant. So this equation relates the components of an enzymic reaction. What are the components of enzymic reactions? Means there are the substrates and enzyme, and their velocity at the initial stage of this chemical reaction. That means before the starting or at the starting point of a reaction, what is the velocity of all the components which participates in that reaction, and maximum through a rate constant called as Km. And this Km, what is that? Km means here it is explained in the form of a equation. Now that is rate of breakdown of enzyme substrate complex by rate of formation of the enzyme substrate complex gives the Km. That means maximum rate of a reaction. That is Km. So breakdown of ES complex. Breakdown of ES complex means as these reactants substrate molecules by joining with the enzyme, they develop the enzyme substrate complex, and this rate develops rate of this formation of enzyme substrate complex. Initially it is 0. That means at the starting stage of reaction, speed or rate of the formation of enzyme substrate complex is slow. Before that, there are no enzyme substrate complex. And here, substrate and enzyme molecules, they start joining with one another. So, rate of this formation of enzyme substrate complex, it is very slow. And after as the time passes, gradually this formation of ES complex that speed ups. So after the formation of ES complex, that gradually shows the breakdown of a enzyme and a product. So that rate, what is the first one? A rate of breakdown of the ES complex. After the formation of ES complex, that furtherly leads the reaction by the dissociation of enzyme and the products. So rate of that, and the next rate of formation of the ES complex. So just now only I told you that the formation of ES complex, initially it is very slow, but as the time passes, gradually the rate of this ES complex formation will be speed up. So initially the rate of breakdown of ES complex is also very slow. Why? Because there is no at this transition state, already ES complex molecules are not there. When this substrate joins with the enzyme, then only they reaches the transition state, and there they will develop ES complex. So, and this complex gradually it splits into enzyme and product. So, according to McLeish and Minton, this Km, what is Km means rate of a breakdown of ES complex. This complex breakdown that depends on the formation of ES complex. If the ES complex is molecules are more, then the rate of breakdown will also be more. And by rate of formation of ES complex, this rate of ES complex initially it is slow. That means ES complexes are very less at the transition state. That means breakdown of ES complex is also be very less at the starting rate. So Km means breakdown of ES complex by formation of a ES complex, indicates Km. Then the properties of enzymes catalyzing two substrate reactions can be studied by varying the concentrations of each substrate in the presence of a saturating concentration of the other substrate and employing the standard graphical procedures. It means here properties of enzymes catalyzing two substrate reactions can be studied by. That means in induced fit theory, there are two substrate molecules. In lock and key theory, active sites are only one. So, according to the enzymes characteristic features, this enzymes catalyzing two substrate reactions can be studied by varying the concentration of each substrate in the presence of saturating concentration of the other substrate and employing the standard graphical procedures. Then, next, the rate of an enzyme catalyzed reaction is often called its velocity. What is the velocity? Means rate of an enzyme catalyzed reaction. Enzyme catalyzed reaction is often called as, that means with which rate that enzyme catalyzes the substrate, and that reaction is called is often called as velocity of that enzyme. So rate of an enzyme catalyzed reaction is often called its velocity. Then enzyme velocities are normally reported as values at time 0. That means just now only we discussed it, that initial velocity of one reaction, that is definitely that will be 0, and that is indicated by V0. The rate of molecules per minute. So here V0 velocity at the starting point of the reaction is 0. Initial velocity is always 0. That's why it is indicated by V0. The rate of enzyme catalyzed reaction is, that means with which speed this enzyme catalyzes is often called as velocity. And this velocity is always, velocity of one reaction is always 0 only. And initial velocity of a reaction is always 0, which is indicated by V0. This is because the V is always 0 at the starting point of the reaction. Means this is because the rate is fastest at the point where no product is at present. As the substrate concentration is greatest before any substrate has been transformed to product. That is the reason for this. So why the V is 0 at initial stages? Means because the rate is fastest at the point where no product is at present. That means the substrates are their substrate and enzyme togetherly, they are starting to give the transition state or enzyme substrate complex. They are in the process. That means end products not at there. End products are at that present situation. End product molecules are not there. That's why rate is fastest at the point where no product is present. As the substrate concentration is greatest before any substrate has transformed to product. That means initially substrate molecules concentration is more. Why? Because they have not or they did not started any ES complex. That means they are not participated or they started to participate in the reaction. That means concentration of the substrate molecules are more at the starting point, and before they transformed into products or before they transformed into ES complex, which furtherly gives output of output and enzymes. So in the initial stage, substrate concentration is more. Why? All the molecules with the influence of enzyme, irrespective of their activation energy, by lowering the activation energy, all the molecules there participates in the reaction at the time. That's why number of substrate molecules are more. Why? Means they are not transformed or transformation of a product. That process wasn't started. That's why concentration is more. And one more is rate of this products formation. It is fastest at the point where no product is present. That means products are not yet formed before the formation of ES complex. That's why rate of this formation of end products is more when there are no product molecules. That means in the initial stage of a reaction, substrate molecules concentration is more, whereas this products concentration will be less. Why? Because they are not yet formed, and here they are not started the reaction to reach the state, transition state, or to form the ES complex. So that is this point. The next, a typical plot of product formed against time for an enzyme catalyzer reaction shows an initial period of a rapid product formation, which gives the linear portion of the plot. Here, what is that? A typical plot of product formed against time for an enzyme catalyzed reaction. That means that reaction is catalyzed by a enzyme and shows an initial period of rapid product formation, which gives the linear portion of the plot. If we plot a graph that shows a straight line, or it gives a linear part of the graph. Why? Means in the initial stage, the rate of reaction starts with the slow only, but afterwards it goes in with a high speed. That means reactions, they are going on in giving ES complex. That's why this graph that gives a straight line or a linear portion or linear part of the graph. So here the point is a typical plot of a product formed against a time for an enzyme catalyzed reaction shows initial period of rapid product formation. That means substrate molecules initially they have with the V0 rate of reaction rate is V0, but afterwards it goes on giving the end products with a speed. So that if we plot a graph, that gives a linear shape, which indicates that the reaction is going on in a speed in giving product molecules or end products. And this is followed by a slowing down of the enzyme rate as substrate is used up or as the enzyme loses activity. This linear shape that gradually comes down, and this is because of two reasons. One is slowing down of the enzyme rate. That means enzyme molecules are active sites. They are not sufficient in slowing down the rate of reaction, or substrate molecules, they are completely consumed. By consuming all the substrate molecules, this rate of reaction will be slowed down, or else enzyme loses its activity. If the enzyme, by various factors, if the enzyme loses its activity, also results in the slowing down of this reaction. So here, two reasons are there. First, by plotting a graph, we have got a linear structure or linear part of this graph, which indicates that the substrate molecules initially with the V0 velocity, they start the reaction, but gradually they picked up and gives a straight line. That means the reactions goes on, the substrate molecules goes on giving end products. That's why it is giving a linear shape. But gradually, after some time, this is followed by slowing down of the enzyme rate. So, and also by completing the substrate molecules also, this rate of the rate of reaction slow down. And another reason is by the factors affect this enzyme loses its activity also. So there are various reasons in coming down the reaction rate. And V0 is obtained by drawing a straight line through the linear part of the curve, starting at the 0 time point. The slope of the straight line is equal to V0. So here, initial velocity of the reaction, it is V0, and it is obtained by drawing a straight line through the linear part of the curve, starting at the 0 time point. And the slope of this straight line is equal to V0. Next, it is named after German biochemist Linear Michaelis and Canadian physician Maud Benton. And the model takes the form of an equation describing the rate of enzymatic reactions by relating a reaction rate V, rate of formation of a product. Rate of V means rate of formation of product, P plus substrate concentration. Then Michaelis-Menten model uses the following concept of enzyme catalysis. Those are enzyme combines with the substrate to form an enzyme substrate complex. And this ES complex can dissociate again to form enzyme plus substrate, can produce chemically to form enzyme and the product P. The rate constants K1, K2, K3 describes the rates associated with each step of the catalytic process. And it is assumed that there is no significant rate for the backward reaction of the enzyme. That means enzyme substrate complex that goes forward in giving the enzyme with the product, but that never comes back. That never comes back to give the substrate and the enzyme. So at any cost, this enzyme substrate complex definitely furtherly this shows the forward reaction only in giving the enzyme as it is without any change with products, and that never shows the backward reaction in giving the substrate and the enzyme molecules. Then product is being converted into ES complex. Then ES remains approximately constant until nearly all the substrate is used. Here, ES, enzyme substrate complex, remains constant until nearly all the substrates molecules are used. Hence, the rate of synthesis of ES equals to the rate of consumption over most of the course of the reaction. That is, ES maintains a steady state. From this concept, they derives the equation. That means ES, it is constant. That state is transition state. And at this point, this ES complex remains constant until unless this substrate molecules totally they transforms into ES complex. So substrate is used, hence the rate of synthesis of ES equals its rate of consumption over most of the course of the reaction. That is, ES maintains a steady state. That means they maintains the standard position. By this, Maclaurin-Menten, they derived the equation. So here, what the proposals are on the mechanism of this enzyme action was there are three proposals, three mechanisms. One is a lock and key theory, and the second is induced effect theory, and the third one is Maclaurin-Menten theory. As you know that lock and key theory, in this lock and key theory, this was proposed by Emil Fischer, scientist, and what he proposed, the shape of the enzyme having with the active sites, they resembles or they joined with the same relative or respected what is a same shape of the substrate molecules, then only they forms a complex. That means by joining with the substrate related substrate molecules, this with the active sites of this enzyme, they gives a enzyme substrate complex, and that complex furtherly dissociates into enzyme and a product, and this product molecules then after the reaction, at the end of this reaction, they connected with one another and gives a product. So that is explained in this lock and key theory. And here enzyme substrate complex, it is only one only. That means here active sites, there are only one type of active sites are there, and these active sites, they are filled or they are fit with the substrate molecules and giving a complex, and this complex again furtherly undergoes reactions in giving enzyme and as a new product. So here both the substrate molecules comes closure, and a bond formation takes place between these two substrate molecules, and this complex with temporary bonds dissociates and gives the end products and enzyme without any change. So here substrate S1 and S2. They have attached with each other by bond formation, and furtherly they are called as product. And all these things are explained in this theory, Lock and key theory. The next second mechanism is induced fit theory. And this theory was proposed by Koshland, and what he explained in his theory means each and every enzyme has two active sites. By having these two active sites, it undergoes reaction and completes the reaction in giving the end products. And those two sites are, one is catalytic site and the other one is buttressing site. And this catalytic site, by undergoing conformational changes, it completes the reaction. And buttressing site, it helps in giving the site for substrate molecules. That means substrate molecules that comes and attaches with the at the buttressing site. That means this buttressing site, it is playing the role of active sites, isn't it? So buttressing site that plays the role of active sites. That's why substrate molecules that comes and attaches at the buttressing site. So catalytic site that helps in making and breaking of the bonds between the substrate molecules, and buttressing site that helps in giving the site for the substrate molecules. Then next, as we said that substrate molecules binds with the buttressing site. Yes, here these are the substrate molecules. They came and attached with the buttressing site, and here it is the catalytic site. So in this enzyme, now we are saying catalytic site, buttressing site with substrate molecules, and all this they gives a complex, that is enzyme substrate complex. Here enzyme substrate complex is developed, and this complex is temporary complex. Before forming this complex, there is another change take place. Here enzyme substrate complex is developed. This complex is temporary complex, and before forming this complex, there is another change. What is that another change? That is this catalytic site before the formation of this enzyme substrate complex. That means after attaching of this substrate molecules to the buttressing site, this catalytic site that shows bending towards the substrate molecules. That means conformational change in its place or in its structure or in its shape. That is by this catalytic site that bends towards the substrate molecules, and this catalytic site that here that helps in binding the substrate molecules by creating a new bond, which is shown in this diagram. Okay, so this catalytic site, by coming closer to the substrate molecules, creates a new bond between the substrate molecules. That's why before the formation of enzyme substrate complex, there is another change which is called as conformational change in catalytic site, and this change gives shape of the enzyme molecule shape is changed, and this is catalytic site comes very closer to the buttressing site or substrate molecule. The next, after that, enzyme substrate complex will be developed. Then function of catalytic site is breaking old bond and creating new bond between the substrate molecules. And as soon as 1 and 2 joins together, new substance is formed, which is called as product. That means by the attachment of the substrate molecules to the buttressing site and conformational change for this catalytic site results in the formation of enzyme substrate complex only. But afterwards, this substrate molecules, they dissociates or detaches from the buttressing site, and they comes out with the new bond between the substrate molecules, and gives a product. That gives the product. And now here buttressing site, it is not undergoing any changes. Buttressing site is not the site for attaching these product molecules. That's why after the formation of a new bond between the substrate molecules, they detaches from the buttressing site, and they comes out as the comes out in the form of a product. So this is stated. What that is means, buttressing site is not the site for end products. It is only the site for attaching the substrate molecules. It is a site for attaching the substrate molecules. As soon as this product is formed, this product that leaves the buttressing site and comes out free, and this enzyme again, it regains its original shape. So in this way, enzymes, they acts with the substrate molecules in giving the end products. This is a second hypothesis or second mechanism which is laid by Koshland. So according to him, there are two active sites. One is catalytic site, the other one is substrate site. Buttressing site. So in lock and key theory, there is only one active site. That means only one type of active sites are there. But here two types of active sites are there, in which one is helping in attaching the substrate molecules, and the other one is by undergoing the conformational changes, it is helping in creating new bonds or breaking the new bonds. Then in both the cases, in lock and key and in this induced fit theory, in both the cases, enzyme and substrate complex is developed, which is temporary stage. In both the cases, ES complex is developed, and this ES complex is temporary state. It's a transitional state. That is it's a intermediate stage from which furtherly we can get the end products. So it is temporary stage. ES complex is temporary. But in induced method, enzyme has two sites. Just only I told you that in lock and key theory, only one active site was there. But here in induced technique, there are two active sites, in which catalytic site is helping in making new bonds, and this catalytic site helps in making new bonds or breaking bonds, old bonds. But here, buttressing site, it is giving the place for the substrate molecules, giving site for the substrate molecules, and after the formation of end products, it is leaving them. Our end products are detaching from the buttressing site. They are leaving the buttressing site. Our end products are not attaching with the buttressing site. They comes out in the form of products, and the enzyme, it comes out as it is. So here in induced fit theory, there are two active sites, catalytic site and buttressing site. And the catalytic site helps in creating new bonds or breaking up old bonds, and buttressing site, it is helping in attaching the substrate molecules and detaching from the product molecules. Then third theory was Michaelis-Menten theory, which was proposed by Michaelis and Menten, and those two scientists, they belongs to German. One Michaelis belongs to German biochemist, and he is a biochemist, and Canadian physician is Maud Menten. Both of them, they proposed one theory, and in that theory, a mathematical expression and equation of Michaelis and Menten wants to describe the interrelationship between the parameters of enzyme reaction. According to them, initial velocity is V0, and V0 is equal to substrate molecules by Km plus substrate molecules. And this equation relates the components of an enzyme reaction the under velocity, initial and maximum, through a rate constant called Km, where Km is equal to rate of breakdown of ES complex by formation of ES complex. So the ratio between these two gives the Km. And properties of enzymes indicating or enzymes catalyzing two substrate reactions can be studied by varying the concentration of each substrate in the presence of a saturating concentration of the other substrate and employing the standard graphical procedures. Properties of enzymes catalyzing two substrate reactions can be studied by varying the different concentrations. Concentration of a substrate in the presence of a saturating concentration of the other substrate molecule and employing the standard graphical procedures. And rate of an enzyme catalyzer reaction is often called as its velocity. That means with which rate it starts in the presence of enzyme is called as velocity. And usually this enzyme velocities are normally reported as values at time 0. That means initial velocity is always indicated by V0 only. And this is because Y means the rate is fastest at the point where no product is yet present. It means product formation was not started. As the substrate concentration is greatest before any substrate has transformed to product. So here, what we can understand, before the formation of products, when the product concentration is less, that means the substrate concentration will be more. Why? Because the substrate molecules, they are not started to transform into products. That's why substrate molecules are more, or substrate molecules concentration is more than the products when the rate of reaction was not yet started. That means gradually this rate of reaction increases. Rate of reaction speed up when the substrate molecules are with high concentration and the product concentration is very less. Then next by plotting a graph, we can understand that that the initial period of a reaction rate is rapid, and product formation, which give product formation will also be rapid, and that gives a linear portion of the graph plot. This is followed by a slowing down of the enzyme rate as substrate is used up, or when the substrate concentration becomes less, then the rate of reaction will goes down gradually. That means as the reaction proceeds with a higher rate, and gradually the substrate molecules are transformed into product, then at one point concentration of the substrate molecules becomes less. Then at that point the rate of reaction comes down. Then V0 is obtained by drawing a straight line through the linear part of the curve, starting at the 0 time point. and the slope of this straight line is equal to V0. So here V0, as we know that already, that V0 is the initial velocity of the reaction, which is always a V0 only. That means initial rate of velocity of the reaction, that is very less, where the substrate molecules are not activated by the enzyme. Then there the velocity of the reaction is very less or zero, more or less zero. So gradually, by the participation of the substrate molecules and enzymes, the rate of reaction goes up, and that gives a straight line. And V0 is obtained by drawing a straight line through the linear part of the curve and straight at the 0 time point. The slope of this straight line is equal to V0. And model, there's Maclais and Minton, their model takes the form of an equation, and that equation describes the rate of enzymatic reactions by relating reaction rate V and rate of formation of product P with substrate concentration of the substrate. So here, what is that? Rate of formation of product depends upon the concentration of the substrate molecules. So that will be described by the equation which was laid by Maclais and Minton. And this Maclais and Minton model used the following concept of enzyme catalysis. And in this, the enzyme, as you know, that enzyme molecule, by having active sites, it combines with the related structure of substrate molecules, and by the combination of these two, they gives a complex which is called as enzyme substrate complex, and that is only shown here. Enzyme E combines with the substrate S to form enzyme substrate complex ES. Then next, this complex can dissociate again. That means this enzyme complex, enzyme substrate complex, that is nothing but transition state. And this transition state, it is not permanent. It is temporary state. And furtherly, this enzyme substrate complex that dissociates, and by undergoing this dissociation, they forms enzyme substrate, or that proceeds chemically to form enzyme and product. That enzyme that comes out as it is without undergoing any change, it comes, and it was declared in the characteristic features of enzymes. One of the point of our characteristic features in what is that? These enzymes are recycled, are reused. That means how it is possible means, after the by joining with the substrate molecules, these enzymes they gives the enzyme substrate complex, and this enzyme substrate complex by dissociation, or that can dissociate into enzyme and a subproduct. So here the enzyme is coming out from this complex as it is. It is coming out as it is without undergoing any changes. So here this enzyme substrate complex is a temporary state, and by passing through this intermediate state, this complex helps in giving a products and an enzyme as it is. Then a rate of constants K1, K2, K3 describes the rates associated with each step of the catalytic process. So during this process, that means enzyme substrates molecules and enzymes with active sites, they proceeds to form intermediate temporary state, that is enzyme substrate complex, and meanwhile chemical changes takes place, and those are indicated by K1, K2, K3. That means This K1, K2, K3 constants, they helps in describing the rates associated with the each and every step of the catalytic process, what the changes will be going on, and that changes will be indicated by this constants like K1, K2, K3. The next step, it is assumed that there is no significant rate of the backward reaction of the enzyme. In any process, we haven't seen the backward changes. That means forward changes only we are observing. That means separate substrate and enzyme molecules. By adding with one another, they give the complex, and this complex by showing the further reaction steps only, it is giving again enzyme and product. In induced fit theory also, this enzyme shape of the enzyme is in this way, and these are the substrate molecules, and they join together giving a complex, and they dissociated. That means by undergoing changes, they gives a new things, and the new things are dissociated with the enzyme, and they give the products also. That means by all this, what we can understand is the reactions are showing only forward changes only. Forward catalytic process is only going on, but there is no evidences of backward going reactions. Backward reactions are not observed in any mechanism. So it is assumed that there is no significant rate of backward reaction of enzymes and product being converted to ES complex. Then ES remains approximately constant until nearly all the substrate is used. Hence, the rate of synthesis of ES equals its rate of consumption over most of the courses of the reaction. That is, ES maintains a steady rate. From this concept, Michaelis-Menten equation was derived. So, by all this, what we can understand by all the three hypotheses, lock and key theory was simple, but in that only one type of active sites were observed. Whereas in induced fit theory, process is same, but there are two types of active sites, and moreover, this second type of active site that helps in joining the substrate molecules, but after the formation of products, it is leaving from the product. This active site, buttressing site, is detaching from the product side, but it is not joining with the product side. So that is one more specific character in induced fit theory. Whereas in this Michaelis-Menten theory, this backward reaction was not observed, where the velocity of the reaction, starting the rate of the reaction, is treated as velocity, and this velocity is zero at the time of starting stage. And all these are proposed by these different scientists, and with this mechanism of enzyme action was over. Then we will discuss another topic in the next class. See you.